Welcome back, everybody, to Week 7 of the ArcLight League. I am DM Armada, and I am joined by none other than Rhea Adams. Rhea, how's it going?
Hello, hello. I'm doing great. I'm excited to be back casting a little bit more.
And we got some fun games for you today. The first one that we're going to start with, let's just go ahead and jump right into it, Rhea. This one is a little interesting because it is none other than Nathan Crawford playing a hero that no longer exists, which is kind of hilarious. Yeah, that's Dromai that you see down there, up against Majin Bey playing Tekla Vossen. Now, for those at home that were wondering, this was played a little while ago. These games are a little bit older, and Dromai was still around and kicking. And we're going to get to enjoy, this is, the one last hurrah of Dromai. So kicking things off by firing off that gold and starting the game off, pitching 2 reds, drawing a card, and stuck with a little bit of an interesting hand. You've got a Tome, you've got a Remembrance, and you've got Invoke Asvali. All cards that are definitely interesting at different moments, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, so it's always great to develop board on turn 0 by, like, say, playing this Asvali. Leaves you with an Ash still because you have 2 Ash available. But the question really becomes then, like, what is the arsenal? Remembrancing no cards in the graveyard isn't fantastic. Tome of Fjendel typically is what you want to put in there. Combos with the Mage Master Boots pretty nicely. Looks like we are going to resolve that Asvali, put it on the board, and furnace away the Remembrance.
Now, Rhea, you are a big Wizard fan. You are perhaps most well known originally for maining Icelander. Nowadays, you've bounced around between. I guess now you're on Enigma, now that she's coming back around. But for a while, you were very well known for Prism. How do you feel about this illusionist, Dromai?
So it's funny that you asked that because I actually can pick up this deck box. I was very close to playing Dromai for many events, but we never quite got there because Prism or Icelander was always legal. I think the hero is very interesting. Dromai attacks on a very unique axis with going wide on a large board state, something that challenges decks that are typically starved for action points like Tekla Vossen, which is, I think, exactly what we're going to see here.
Mm-hmm.
We see Majin having a very strong hand. It blocks 12. It has a popper in it. But there is no go again here, despite there being multiple action cards that he would want to resolve in this hand.
And we can also make out on the side there the 64-card deck of Majin Bey and the 55-card deck of Nathan there on the bottom. This is, of course, turn 2 technically, meaning that after we've drawn up, we now have a full hand and choices galore for Majin. He's going to go ahead and throw on the Evo Steel Soul helmet. That's going to give him 3 block on the board. Starting off with no block whatsoever is Tekla Vossen usually. I like how he's sort of waving away whoever's there in the background, kind of funnily enough. Nevertheless, he continues to play.
Ooh, and a bit awkward here. Nathan drawing a blue on his Tome of Imperial Flame, so kind of restricted in what choices he gets to make in terms of what cards he has to pitch here.
Yeah, Tome of Imperial Flame kind of came around there at the end of the life cycle of Dromai, and it forced you, if you were playing it, into running a more redline build than even before. Before there was already a redline version of Dromai, and this really fit nicely into this. But How it fits into the mid-range control style that had blues, had yellows, that was the question mark, the one that remained to be seen. And it sometimes ends up making a very clunky turn, which is kind of what we see here. Now, we do have a lot of things still available to us after pitching those two reds and
And we do see
continuing the
that.
turn.
Yeah, we do see that power play here of Mage Master Boots plus Toma Fiendel from Arsenal. 5 life gained, 5 cards in hand for Nathan, and we are just going to be really developing this board state. Building Mirage, not only attacking for 3, but also importantly making an Aether Ashwing on the back end. There's a Chromite here, there's a passing Mirage. Majin is about to be really challenged in terms of how useful are his poppers actually between that combination of threats.
Now, Teklevossen does run a decent number of poppers, one sitting in the
Mhm.
hand, as you can see here. So there is a question mark out there of whether or not you want to develop something like a Chromite right now and then attack with, Chromite into Asvali, Chromite into Ashwing, something to that effect. But instead, Nathan going to opt here to just send the Ashwing, immediately receives the popper, even though we have all of these defensive cards in hand. The popper is what is immediately sent over by Majin. And then to salvage the rest of this turn, try not to lock yourself a little bit too much. We see the pitch into the flame scale furnace. How is this feeling sitting 48 to a 40 health Teklevossen from your position, Rhea?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of scary. So there's an Asvali on the board. It has 3 life, which importantly is 1 more than the Tectoplasma Pistol can kill efficiently. And Asvali importantly deals arcane damage, and you might notice there's no arcane barrier on Majin's side because he needs to be resolving Evos. And when this game was played, the expansion slot Evos that have arcane barrier weren't a thing yet.
They did not exist. That is
Um,
exactly right.
I think Majin's only hope, especially when Dromai has this hot of a start, is to get all 4 Evos down as fast as possible and start slamming with those tanked attacks, like the War Machine that we see in his hand right now, and try to overpower Dromai before her board gets out of control, literally. We're halfway there. I think there was Singularity in Majin's opening hand, so we're
Yes.
probably not playing to that win con in this game. I Things are looking grim despite the high life totals, I would say.
But being halfway to the full creation of your armor suite does feel quite nice. We did see a fabricate in the
Mhm.
hand previously to this. That is a saving grace in this matchup, or in just in any matchup as well for Teklevossen. But once this board starts to really snowball, that is when things get very difficult because there aren't that many efficient ways for Teklevossen to remove dragons multiple times on a single turn. Like you mentioned,
Yeah.
Tekleplasma Pistol only pushes for 2. And the benefit here for Majin is that the board is only an Asvali and a Miragai, and of course a Passing Mirage as well, which is very scary. 2 very potent, very terrifying dragons on board, and 1 very dangerous aura. But at the very least, you're not already swarmed by Ashwings. And so maybe some window and some wiggle room here to try and carve out some board space and take out that Passing Mirage is the choice made by Majid.
There also is some interesting potential counterplay. I know that some Teklovosins play pistol items in their deck, like Induction Chamber to attack with pistol multiple times in a turn, which also could be a really important out if it's in Majin's deck and he draws it relatively soon. Rake the Embers, without any go again though, from Majin's side, about to be very scary.
Yeah, Rake the Ember is one of the best cards in Dromai. For those of you who are huge Dromai fans, everyone knows Rake the Embers, one of the best cards in the deck. But if you are new to the game of Flesh and Blood, Rake the Embers allows you to basically turn 3 Ash that you control into Ash Wings. It creates an Ash as well, and of course, because it's a red card, you are and costs 1, you are pitching most likely red cards to it to create even more Ash. It just does everything that you want it to do as the Dromai player, and here it makes this board menacing.
And I do want to point out Nathan is doing an excellent job playing around all of the poppers that we mentioned that Teklevosin had. Last turn it was Miragai plus Passing Mirage. Passing Mirage was cleared. Now we resolve the second Miragai so that even if you kill one, there's still one left on the board. He's just guaranteeing that he has multiple turns in a row where at least his first swing is not popped.
Sitting at 48 life after the play of the tome, along with, I believe, a sigil as well, pushing him way into the driver's seat as far as life is concerned. But not much headway being made on the life total side of things. We're definitely in for one of those longer games as you can look at those life totals. But this board, on any given turn where you can get away with, maybe just a one popper hand, which we could see here coming up, you can just swing very wide and start chunking down the life totals from the Dromai side. Here comes Invoke Kyloria, going to establish Kyloria, a 4-attack, 2-health dragon on the board that says, if this hits, I get to take one of your items. If you don't have an item, I just get to draw a card.
And we do see the induction chamber that I mentioned earlier allowing Majin to go a little bit wider. There is one issue, which is that we need an action point to get that item on the board. And there is a Kyloria on the field right now, so it's probably not hitting this turn. We can block Kyloria on armor or with that sink below, but it's a bit scary to let that live for too long.
Yeah, indeed. And looking at the options and the recourse that Majin has on his side, he's got ways to attack into that second Miragai. Unfortunately, sees the second Passing Mirage come down, which is continuing to make the Kyloria that much more terrifying. And oh my god,
Oh my gosh.
Nathan draws into a third Passing Mirage, a third Invoke Miragai in the first 20 cards of his deck. Majin doesn't know, but he's gonna find out very soon that the pain will continue until morale improves.
Yeah.
It is not looking good.
This also is a hand that just casts Miragai and Uvia. Uvia with the constant string of Ashwings, also extremely threatening versus Teklevosin.
Yeah, you're
Majin
almost
finds
spoiled for choice here, aren't you? You could choose a multitude of different ways to take this turn from Nathan's side of things.
Majin does find his arm evos now, so we're just missing the chest. The question is, will he have the breathing room to resolve those, or is he just about to be swarmed by dragons?
Looking at the damage on board, if everything is completely left wide open and no poppers are committed, which we do see one in hand, we have 2 Ashwings just right now before anything else is resolved, 2 Asvalai on the board. You've got 1 Kyloria and 1 Miragai as well. So you're looking at 4, 6 plus 6. Yeah, just a casual boatload of damage. Which when you're counting that up alongside of Uvia, that's going to be pumping out dragons from this point forward, and you can maybe see the hole that Majin has to dig himself out of here.
Yeah, so Majin made the active choice last turn. He said, you know what? I've got armor block for this Kyloria. It's not that important. I can afford it to not have Phantasm for one turn. I need to get this induction chamber down so I can start clearing multiple things in one turn cycle. I think it makes a lot of sense. The issue is Nathan just keeps adding scarier and scarier things to this board.
Yeah, this Kyloria here threatening not a card draw, but a stealing of that induction chamber, which is quite terrifying if your plan to get out of this board is to swing a pistol a couple of times. You need to commit to this block, and it's most likely going to result in, an awkward block here, especially if it means losing your helmet, which feels quite bad if you have to lose Evo Steel Soul Memory. Could just mean you throw your boots in front of it and then a second card from hand, which just inefficient, and you don't really have a lot of space to be inefficient in this board state.
Yeah, it's going to be painful either way. But if our whole plan is to build towards those 4 Evos online, Terminator tanks and War Machines, really can't afford the Steel Soul Memory to die here. We do have the popper in hand now for whatever the second swing is. We'll see if Nathan can kind of soul read that and play this Passing Mirage, or if it's going to kind of go to waste in this hand.
Looks like Nathan having some conversation about possible play lines, and he's going to send the Ashwing on over. That is going to immediately get popped as you would
Mhm.
expect. Going to then trigger the pitch of the passing mirage, the blue, which isn't going to do anything necessarily except be removed from the hand off that flame scale furnace, so that you can just refresh and reset.
Okay, so now we're finally getting to go 2 chain links wide, killing things. Um, Looks like the target here is Triloria. Makes a lot of sense. We don't want our induction chamber to be stolen. Curious to see what else he cleans up on this board. It's probably Passing Mirage. Could
Yeah.
be an Ashwing. Yeah, a Passing Mirage.
Yeah, passing mirage is perhaps the most value you can get off of the board if you can follow this up by killing Mirror Guy on a subsequent turn, and then you open yourself up to the possibility
Mhm.
of popping with impunity on every attack as long as your opponent doesn't have a fourth copy of any of those cards, seeing as
O-
they've played all three of the others. Drawing.
Okay. Well, now this is interesting. So Majin just found he arsenaled his arms evos. He just drew the chest evo, and he drew a way to play it this turn with the Scrap Trader.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he has the Popper in hand. This is kind of all of the ingredients he needs to stay in this game, as crazy as that sounds.
Interestingly enough, Scrap Trader, one of those cards that has sort of bounced back and forth between relative obscurity and just being played in Teklevossen.
Mhm.
Very divisive card at the outset of Bright Lights, people trying to decide if it was just absolutely busted in the deck or if it had no place whatsoever. I think it fell more towards the fringes of deck choices, never really made its way
Yeah.
into too many decks, but here it could provide useful, as you mentioned.
I've done a lot of looking at Scrap Trader myself. I put a lot of math into trying to decide if that card was good or bad, and almost always the answer is it's got high highs and low lows.
Yeah, I
We'll
believe you
see if
wrote a Wraith Times article about it that I remember
I
reading.
did.
And at about halfway through, my eyes glazed over. I took a quick nap. I came back to it, ate a sandwich, tried to reprocess everything that you had broken down. Fantastic article. And
Thank you.
at the end of it all, I realized, yeah, I'm just gonna leave that card out of Teklevossen and just do other
Yeah,
things.
I think we see it commonly as like a two of, where I think it makes a lot of sense. I do want to point out something that was easy to miss last turn, which was there was a remembrance from Majin's side getting three of his poppers back into deck, kind of artificially inflating his popper number and giving him a shuffle, which is really important. Remember how we said Singularity was
Hmm.
pitched turn one? It is not necessarily on the bottom of the deck anymore, and he has all four Evos. So this main game might get very interesting very quickly.
I mean, you look at the board side of Dromai, and you may assume that the game is all but over at this point. How do you clean this up? But don't forget, when Teklevossen has the capability of flipping into the singularity, that stonewalls multiple turns for
Yeah,
any hero, especially a hero that needs reds, needs to play cards to get go again to
yeah,
actually activate their board. So there is, like you mentioned, the capacity for this game to flip very quickly if Singularity does come into play here. We do know that that chest piece sitting there in the hand. We do know, like you mentioned, the arm piece sitting in the arsenal. But can we weave our way into playing both of those? The popper immediately slammed down on the Ashwing, and no play of the remembrance, keeping it in hand, sort of locking yourself for one extra card, choosing instead to hold on to it. Quite interesting there. What do you make of that?
yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. So there's just not a lot of cards in Nathan's graveyard for him to remember it's back yet. He might just not be happy with the selection that he has. Similarly, there's a Burn Them All in his hand, which that card is fantastic, especially against an opponent that doesn't have Arcane Barrier. But if it only lives for 2 to 3 turns, like it might right now, it might not be time to resolve that card yet. This hand is kind of interesting in that it's maybe the first time we don't see a dragon outside of an Ashwing added to the board in this game. Nathan is pretty healthy in terms of Ash. He's got 3 left, and Uvia is just going to keep churning Ashwings with those as long as she can.
Starting to turn
Is what
off here with Billowing Mirage. Going to send that
Mhm.
across the board. Used that opportunity, was Majin, clearing a couple of dragons off of the board, trying to get control of this, feeling a little bit better perhaps overall on the
Yeah.
board state. And this turn, like you mentioned, might also kind of feed into that. Yes, there is an Uvia that is going to be creating Ashwing after Ashwing, but those Ashwings for one are far less threatening than a Miragai or a Kyloria or another copy of Asvali.
I'll say what is threatening here is the fact that Majin's hand doesn't have any poppers, but Nathan, playing conservatively, has tried to play around the poppers and is kind of giving Majin some breathing room as a result. Interesting that the chest Evo was pitched away last turn cycle, feeding into the pistol killing plan. I'm not sure when the next time we will see a chest Evo is, and I don't think there's one in the graveyard currently.
There's the activation of
Mhm.
Teklevossen to go ahead and add the Evo Steel Soul controller to the board. That gives him 3 fresh block here. It also allows him, because that piece is down, to sort of power up this blocking card here, which normally Steel Street Enforcement only blocks, if I remember correctly, blocks for like 1. But
One.
now that we have
Mhm.
3 Evos on board, this blocks completely. So this is actually a perfect moment for
Yeah.
this card to come down and for that Evo to make its way out. Very well timed on that instant ability of Teklevossen to
Yeah.
bring that piece out.
Feels like Teklevosen's first line of text, the instant play, uh, an Evo as an instant is really easy to overlook. But it's these small moments where you realize just how much value, just how much power is in that extra line of text.
It's going to be loading up the pistol, loading up the induction chamber that was used, pistol for 2,
Mhm.
sending it on
Just
over,
starting,
just removing,
yeah,
removing dragons from the board.
removing importantly the arcane damage from the board, which oh, this is really dangerous because there's a Tome of Imperial Flame here, which on its own generates 3 resources if you combine it with Flamesteel Furnace. But there's also an Invoked Necria here, a dragon that is typically very difficult to resolve as Dromai, but brutal if you can get it onto the board. Even
Necria, one of those dragons that just comes down as a 4 attack, 7 health dragon, just a huge body that every time it deals damage or takes damage is going to create more ash. You don't care about the ash in this matchup. You are ash rich in this and many other matchups, but this is definitely one of those dragons that has a lot of staying power. And if you can bait out any poppers and find that your opponent doesn't have any poppers, 4 damage on the board in a very hard to remove body is incredibly scary.
and you know what? If you can't sniff out that your opponent doesn't have poppers, that's okay. Just play Miragai with it. That's what Miragai's for.
We have the resolution here. You could also just follow this up with a play of a Miragai. If you want to pitch the Billowing Mirage, you can play Miragai onto one of those Ash as well, and
Absolutely.
then start swinging. Let's see what
Do
he
we
chooses to
remember
do. Yeah.
Do we remember what's in Nathan's arsenal at this point? I've lost
I was
track of
just
that.
wondering that as well. I'm not quite sure. We know it's not a copy of Burn Them All. Well, it could be a copy of
Mhm.
Burn Them All. I don't think I've seen one drawn at this point. But he is going to resolve that Miragon on the board. This Necria is going to come across for 4. It does indeed hit. It is going to deal damage, so it will lose a life and make an Ash, pushing him into just healthy Ash range again. And this Ashwing will absorb the Popper. If
Mhm.
you're trying to pick up the game and you want to start with Dromai because you like dragons, first of all, she is, of course, in the Living Legend format now, so you can kind of jump into the Living Legend format. But if you are doing that, this sequencing is what you want to learn, the bread and butter. Start with a dragon that has high value, that is protected by Phantasm, and then follow up with Ash Wings because they will absorb poppers if they are there in the
Yeah.
hand.
Absolutely brutal here to see another Tome of Imperial Flame from Nathan. He's just relentless in developing this board state. I do think it's interesting. I wonder, with 3 Evos online, are we going to see this War Machine go at Dromai's face? Always threatening to discard the card from hand, of course. 6 overpower is not uh trivial to block out.
I think it's difficult to commit to playing, not only just playing that card, but playing it to face when the
Mm,
board looks as menacing as it does, especially when you have a much perhaps more efficient option of just sending pistol again to remove, another threat. But it
yeah.
leaves you wide open to, just get Tome of Imperial Flamed again. And like you mentioned, this is the another copy that we've seen back to back to back almost. And just like with many other card draw cards in the game of Flesh and Blood, playing one gets you closer to playing a second, which gets you
Yeah.
closer to playing the third in this case. Choosing what to pitch
And
here, having to
wow,
decide, this is tough.
have we found an incredible hand to tome into? So if we pitch the Mai here, yep. So we have 3 resources available, we have 4 Ash available, and 3 dragons in hand. So kind of scot-free, we still have an Ash afterwards. It was
Oh,
Rake
it
the
was a rake the
Embers
embers from the
the
arsenal.
whole time.
This is nuts. An absolutely insane turn to just build this board to insurmountable odds. 8 Ashwings on the board. You've got 8 Ashwings. You've got Asvali, Necria, Uvia, Thamai, a Partridge, a Pear Tree, a Yindarai tucked in there as well.
And a Chromai in arsenal, and a Chromai in hand, and the 3rd Rake the Embers in hand. I will say something. Majin is doing an incredible job of keeping his life total healthy, given how large this board is.
And
I feel like
yeah, no, no,
most,
keep going. Go ahead.
yeah, most games you see by now, once this many threats hits the board, there's some hand where there's no popper and just the game kind of ends on the spot. But with this remembrance and this careful management of poppers, you'll notice Majin didn't arsenal that Junkyard Dog last turn. He sandbagged that card in hand. He looked at Nathan and said, "Listen, we both know what this is. You have to play around this." And it's really keeping him alive despite this kind of flood of ash and dragons.
And to accentuate that point, take a look at the deck totals of both players. Majin
Yeah.
still relatively healthy at 33 life and 52 cards in deck. If we're counting the 2 cards in pitch, he has 54 cards in circulation. With the side of Dromai with 36 cards in deck, 4 cards in hand with the 1 in arsenal, and then of course there's an entire suite of dragons on the board. So if you want to count those as well, those are almost better than just cards in deck. But the point still stands. He is at least still healthy on deck totals, not being fatigued from that side of things. The question is, can he just consistently pop, pop, pop and withstand this onslaught? It's like holding back the dam from bursting.
Yeah. This is actually kind of an interesting hand because we have a lot of premium threats. We have 2 Chromais available, we have a Rake to the Embers, we have an Uvia available, and of course a Sigil of Solace, which is just kind of like a bread and butter card in Dromai. But if you'll notice, we went into this turn with only 1 Ash, so we can't just play all these cards willy-nilly. And Nathan instead has to make the difficult decision. All right, let's pitch away this Rake the Embers. We're going to go down to 0 Ash, but it
Mm-hmm.
involves resolving 2 Chromais this turn, which, unless Majin is incredibly lucky and has drawn 3 poppers, we're going to get to go really wide. And it feels like we're going to take some damage this turn. The whole
Yep.
board is swinging because we've just found that there is not 3 poppers in Majin's hand.
Yep, this is one of those turning point moments, and very well set up by Nathan to recognize that in order to break through a deck that has a decent number of poppers, that can at any moment have 1 to 2 poppers in hand, you're going to need to bank action points off of Chromai. So we've seen him have a Chromai in hand before and pitch it. Have a Chromai in hand before and arsenal it so that you can have a double Chromai turn, because that is very much a kill on sight dragon, especially with pistol on board. And this is the time where you're actually making hay and sending all of your dragons, even the Uvia. You don't care. You want the damage, and you can see the life total beginning to melt away for Majin.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep track here because you think ninjas have large combat chains. We're on chain link 13 right now and counting. And it's just not stopping. This is many, many attacks in one turn.
And this is where
Necria.
this is where he follows up with Breaking Point to blow up the arsenal. If you had the
Well,
capacity for that.
I will say earlier in the turn I mentioned about going down to 0 Ash, kind of a bold move. but off to the side where you can't see it because of the scrolling size of the
Yes.
screen on Talishar, there was that Necria hiding there that, on hit does generate ash, which is
Hmm.
exactly what we saw, and suddenly, Dromai's engine is completely back online again.
If you're looking at this and you're like, man, I wish I could make a board just like this, don't forget Enigma is out. Well, depending on when you watch this, could be out now as the set Part the Mistveil does release this weekend. And she is quite prolific at making board states as well. Not dragons so much, but still some pretty crazy board states herself.
Caleb, Majin kind of giving it away there, the why no popper, as we can see in this hand. Why couldn't I find that induction chamber earlier in the game? Yes, if you like board states, if you like shiny little spectral shields instead of little ash wings, maybe you should check out Enigma. I have it on good authority that hero is very fun.
So the question here on the side of Nathan, as they both joke back and forth about the board state, perhaps, or what else he has, and spoiler alert, it's another Chromai, gonna gain that action point from attacking. The card is not met with a popper. The question is, how much damage can we push over the top on this turn? And Majin's basically just in life maintenance mode, trying to get the most efficiency out of his cards and maybe return volley with the pistol, but things are certainly slipping from this point forward.
Yeah, we are losing ground rapidly. Still no sign of Singularity. We haven't seen a chest Evo in a while, which is kind of our only out at this point. Nathan at a staggering 46 life. That's significantly higher than his starting life total, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, and that actually brings up a great point. If we rewind the game back to that moment where we had the chest piece, where we had the arm piece, and there was perhaps a moment where we could have argued that establishing one and then following up trying to establish the other via like maybe the instant speed effect could have made a bit of a difference in this board state, but it would have given up a lot of tempo and health earlier on. At what point does that actually behoove us? What does it benefit us to actually do that, or to play more efficiently and fire the Tecloplasma pistol, which ended up being the line that was taken by Majin? But
Yeah.
unfortunately, that line led to this point, and well, 3 to 46 and a dumpster of dragons, as Brian Gottlieb calls it, is quite difficult to overcome.
Yeah, we are on a dangerous clock here because there is an Asvali on the board that can't die this turn. So we've got 3 turns for Majin to solve whatever is going on here. Otherwise, he's dying to arcane damage, or he finds a Sigil of Solace.
Now look at this. He
Singularity in
does
his
have
hand.
singularity
Oh,
and he has the chest piece, but unfortunately he doesn't have the space for it because he's already just conventional attack being threatened for lethal here.
yeah,
The fabricate feels good in this moment to give you extra equipment block, but having the singularity at this moment's almost the anti-timing because you
yeah.
you need to protect your life total at all costs, and you just don't have the space to establish that final chest piece.
Yeah.
Coming
So
for
all of
5 go again, perhaps? I think yep, 5 go again.
so I would expect a fabricate here that banishes the chess piece and gives +1 to the evos that are blocking,
Hmm.
so that we can not just roll over and die to this enlightened strike. We're hoping then to draw a second popper or a blue off of that fabricate draw, just blocking instead with the chess piece. Okay.
Perhaps the thought being we can pop on the second dragon, we can give equipment and fabricate. No, I think he's just throwing in the towel. He knows there's
Yeah.
just too much to overcome. The pressure on the board is just too high. And he's giving the old GG is Majin Bay over to Nathan Crawford. Congratulations to Nathan, but oh my goodness, was that a board state at the end? That's like some
That
Dromai of old right there.
That was certainly a draw my board state. I think that's interesting because whenever an Lucius is involved, the life totals never tell the full story. And that was a 0 to 46 game, but that also had the potential to be like go very differently, and it was really cool to watch throughout.
Yeah, it was. There were certainly some moments that you could go back and you can try to revisit and see what happens if we take the different line from either perspective.
Mhm.
Nevertheless, Nathan picking up the win there against Majin's Teklevossen. And we've got one more game for you. This one's a fun one as well. It's a Levia mirror. So let's jump into that one. So Michael
Okay.
is now on top there with Art of War. Swing big. We've got on the bottom, we've already talked about those 3 cent packings, but I'm curious to see who ends up going first. And there's a lot of intricacies in Levia's game plan in overall and
Yes.
just anything, but even just in a mirror setting as well. Filling graveyard, knowing when to trigger. Oh, and look at this. Exactly
Okay.
Arsenal pass on turn 0. And then immediately threatening that Arsenal with one of the Sind packings to see it. And it's going to come back to hand, but that Art of War, hugely important to want to be able to block and
Yeah.
return to the hand.
Yeah, and Michael kind of has the perfect follow-up here of just send the swing big, put another card in my graveyard, put that Art of War back where it was, and I feel like these players are both going to be racing to stock their graveyards with these
Hmm.
really spicy red 6 power attacks like we just saw Chris do, so that they can access them later. Double Dread Streamer in Michael's hand here. If we can get a card in graveyard, this might be the turn to start banishing some cards here.
Gonna block on the Mandible Claw. One floating. Don't know what I forgot to catch what the arsenal was for Chris, but the Art of War is gonna be the play here. Pitching the Wrecker Romp, gonna choose to banish Dread Screamer and open yourself up to a nice little Endless Maw with Go Again for 9, and we can follow that up with Boneyard Marauder, which is
Mhm.
quite a nice little turn off of an Art
Yeah.
of War.
Believe Chris's arsenal is a red Boneyard Marauder, so it makes sense why he's comfortable blocking with the one from hand, just to
Mhm.
try to feed it into the one that he already has.
Swinging the claw here with those 2 resources, meaning that we're probably just pocketing that last card. It's going to be their own
Mhm.
Boneyard Marauder. Michaels is going to be immediately threatened by Command and Conquer, making it a very nice and easy turn. Unfortunately, it does mean that we are going to be taking 3 Blood Debt on this turn, since we did not turn off Blood Debt, I believe.
Both
Nope, there it
both of
goes.
these players starting very fast their blood debt clocks, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Coming in with Hungering Slaughter Beast for 7 here, and that's a sink below, going to meet it alongside of the Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell, one of the longest titles in Flesh and Blood, and then Command and Conquer number 2. Just saying, yeah, I'm fine with 4 Blood Debt here.
yeah, this is very aggressive. Just trying to whittle ourselves down to our. I mean, once the faster you get to that 13 life threshold for Plasma Fet Levia consumed, the faster
Hmm.
you get access to just redrawing all of the power cards that you've banished over the course of the game, right?
It's interesting too. We've seen 2 back-to-back Command and Conquers be played, trying to threaten
Mhm.
the arsenal. Look at them both just chuckling about the blood debt not being turned off. They're just hitting each other or themselves more than each other. But Command and Conquer being played back-to-back on a board with Carrion Husk as an option seems really interesting, because Carrion Husk can just easily meet that Command and Conquer whenever, basically with impunity. But that's also a
Mhm.
little bit of a mini game that you kind of play when you want to get the most value out of Carrion Husk. Is it to protect the arsenal? Is it to, like take away the possibility of like a Sind packing out of nowhere? That's the real question, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of a very bold Scabston Leathers roll right there, because if you hit that one, that's 5 more blood debt and 2 cards stranded in hand. But it's kind of incredible to see just how many power cards have been drawn in these first few turns of the game. There's been multiple Art of Wars, multiple Command and Conquers. Both players still kind of fishing for their Blood Rush Bellows, which are really what seals the deal in terms of making these claws real threats in this matchup. But
Hungering Slaughter Beast to come across again. And look at this. Michael's sitting at 8 blood debt. I think if there's a little bit of perhaps a visual glitch down at the bottom, but I think Chris is also around that 8 blood debt range, unless something has changed. I believe it was 8 earlier. Nevertheless, they're
Yeah.
both, like you mentioned, stacking up that blood debt very quickly, just playing like they just don't care at all. Yeah, look at that. It's 8 blood debt available
We're
to. It's
also
shocking.
we're also seeing original Plasma Fet hit the board. Not Leviathan Consume, not your fancy Demi hero, the actual ally with that Doomsday being resolved, talking about so much blood debt so early in the game. Chris about to take 8 blood debt because there's no banish after this swing bid.
That is shocking. This is interesting because the life totals haven't changed. Perhaps a little bit of a visual glitch there,
Oh, maybe
just
so.
not perhaps showing us. There is a switch off of blood debt. I think,
Okay.
yeah, I think that there's a bit of a visual glitch that's just throwing everyone a little bit off. Nevertheless, a back and forth slugfest. You mentioned it earlier. Art of War here, Blood Rush Bellow as well, coming across with a Slithering Shadowpede for 8 go again. And this is not the only thing that's going on the turn, but Chris has his own Art of War pocketed in the arsenal, looking for his own time to just throw it on out there.
Yeah, both players access to some very interesting cards here. There's Dominate coming on Michael's side, it looks like, with that Writhing Beast Hulk. Some of Levia's card names get mixed up in my head. Diabolic Offering on Chris's side. I
Hmm.
feel like that's one that you don't see very often in Levia, but the potential for just an incredible ceiling as a, if you do it right, a blue 6-power 1-cost attack.
Yeah, Writhing Beast Hulk indeed is going to come across. It's going to do some banishing. Didn't quite catch what it banishes, but it looks like it hit because it does have Dominate. Means we're only
Yeah,
going to be able to commit the 3 there, but that was a large turn that did a whole lot of damage, pushing Chris down to 18. And it means that we're just going to send Swing Big for 8. Not necessarily what you want, especially with, I don't believe, Blood Debt being turned off here.
I think Blood Debt is not turned off here, but I think,
Well,
oh,
doesn't look
maybe
like it.
it.
Strange. Either way, oh my goodness, another Blood Rush Bellows comes down and it draws into another Art of War
Another Art of War?
with 2 floating.
Oh my gosh. This is you're living the dream here.
I mean, it's interesting because this game was certainly played several weeks ago, but we're moving into a new meta with Part the Mistveil, and there's a lot of talk right now that Levia is one of the better heroes in the meta. And
Absolutely.
I mean, you look at this coupled with the new card they got in the expansion slot from this or this upcoming set, Part the Mistveil, and you can see why when they can just hit the win button with Art of War, Blood Rush Bellow, big swing turns, Mandible Claws, like Boneyard Marauder, even just like the new card that they're printing for the hero, and they can sit behind Carrion Husk. It's hard not to just look at this deck and go, I need to learn that because it seems like one of the best.
Yeah. The new expansion slot card, I'm awful at naming it because it's a mashup of like 3 card names, but
Yeah.
very apt because it does like 3 different things. Um, Talk about absolute gas for a deck that clearly is already very strong. Kind of awkward draws here off of that Art of War draw after the Blood Rush Bellow.
Hmm.
Deadwood Rumbler, Wrecker Romp, and Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell. Not exactly what you call power cards in Levia. Those typically are like your utility blues that you really like pitching. Um, Interesting to see kind of a turn salvaged from what's really a dead draw there.
And this forced in defensive Art of War here, which is quite interesting because
Yeah,
taking 8 isn't necessarily what you want to do. You do need to get value out of Carrion Husk here as well because you're sitting at 15. Any lower, once you hit that 13 threshold, you have to banish it at the start of your turn, and you don't get to block with it at all. So this may be the turn that you actually commit the Carrion Husk and maybe leak a few points. It could work you into that trigger point as well that you talked about earlier from Blasmafet,
yeah.
Leviathan Consumed.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you give just Carrion Husk here, you actually miss the threshold, right? Because you need to go from 14 to 13 via Blood Debt. And if we take 2, we go exactly to 13. We might see Apex Bonebreaker also
Hmm.
being blocked with here.
Yeah, that was my thought as
It,
well. Is he considering losing the value by not blocking with a card from hand? Because we saw the
yeah,
almost snap block of the Command and Conquer as if you were going to try to get value with Apex, and look, there it is. He's going to go ahead and just try to get the extra value from the Apex Bonebreaker, get that extra might. Unfortunately, it's not going to do anything on this turn, and he's just going to. Is he just going to take all this blood debt?
I think we're about to lose Carrion Husk here. Yeah.
Yeah, Carrion Husk is gonna go, I believe.
Oh no, he has one
No.
more turn because it vanishes at
Mm-hmm.
start of turn.
That is true.
That's what we were missing.
So this is the turn. This is the moment that Carrion Husk has to be blocked and activated on this turn. This is one of those innocuous mandible claws for 3 that we saw a lot with KO in the limited version of heavy hitters, because we know
Def-
it's going to get go again off that agility.
no, definitely no tricks, except when there is always a trick.
Exactly. They never didn't have it. There's the
Yeah.
Carrion Husk block, and now we have ourselves a 3-card hand, starting ourselves with the same play.
Yeah. So
Just 3.
this is very interesting. Chris has a lot of work to do here in a very short amount of time. He can only clear 1 blood debt card out of his banished every turn, which means that he's going to banish 10 cards out of his deck. Remember, once you go consumed, you don't take damage anymore. You just banish out of deck. So I think I see around 30 cards left in his deck. He loses a third of those this turn. He loses about a third of those next turn. He's got about 3 turns to seal this game here.
Yeah, Michael has done a very good job of just drawing the power and sequencing it in the way that it needed to be sequenced. I mean, he's found those Blood Rush Bellows. He's found Art of War. Unfortunately, this time banishing. Well, actually, it was just off of the Hungering Slaughter Beast, so it didn't even matter. He just banishes away a miss, but gets the hit. Turns off his own blood debt, and he's sending 8 damage when your opponent's sitting at 13. No
Yeah.
target for Scowling Flesh Bags, so you don't even need to worry about that, your opponent trying to get value out of you. They just have to commit like blocks and figure it out themselves while you just get to throw big attacks.
Yeah. Really impressive, to be honest, how both players so far this game have really done a good job playing around each other's Scowling Flesh Bags. It's kind of in these Brute Mirrors a competition to see, who can have the better Intimidate. And part of that is not letting your opponent have a good Intimidate. Typically, you try to do this by like pitching to Claw with Go Again and then playing from Arsenal so that there is nothing from hand to be intimidated, like we've seen once or twice in this game. Carrion Husk being cashed in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're kind of reaching a breaking point here. Another Blood Rush Bellow. And I
Yeah,
think these are Chris's first Blood Rush Bellows in his hands, but a little late in the way that you don't want to see them together and not this late in the game.
exactly. It's unfortunate to play into a mirror when you know there are these powerful cards and your opponent sees them and you don't get to see them. But trying to find your way, even when that happens, is the hallmark of a great player. Chris, a great player, and working his way through. Unfortunately, sitting like you mentioned earlier at only about 20 or so cards in deck. He's going to be losing a lot of them each turn. Only has a couple of turns to really try and make his way in this game. Scowling is going to find a target here. The question is he going to commit anything else to the block? If he takes 3, he goes to 10, and he opens himself up to whatever is basically in the arsenal at this point. He doesn't know what's in hand. He doesn't know the colors there. He's going to give, yeah, exactly 1 Blood Rush Bellow, which is probably fine because you don't want them both in the hand anyway. Oh, but it's 8 on the back end, which is a lot of damage and puts you really close to that just dead zone when something like a Writhing Beast Hulk gets played down.
Michael has done an excellent job managing his blood debt and keeping his graveyard stocked this game. At 14 blood debt now, and has taken, maybe 4 points from it across how many turns are we at now?
It can't be very many.
We do see, finally, a Blood Rush Bellow here. Kind of awkward to draw the Endless Maw follow-up, but not the blue to go with it. I assume that we'll be able to get something juicy, probably 1 cost, out of our Banished Zone, though.
See, but so well played, though, is
Yeah.
Michael immediately recognizing that, yeah, on this turn, you have a 2-card hand. After this, you're sending Claw. I can just take one of those cards and your turn is over.
Oh, and the turn is really over. There isn't a 1 cost from Banished to follow up.
And
That's brutal, almost entirely countering a Blood Rush Bellow with just the Scowling Flesh Bag on board.
that card, when it was printed, everyone looked at it and realized how good it was. And that just showed it right there. basically
Yeah.
ending the turn if used correctly. And when you have tempo lead, Scowling Fleshbag just wins you games. And right
Yeah.
now, trying to push across for that finish, 4 damage with Go Again. You know there's cards to follow this up. You can only block as efficiently as possible. Gonna go to 3. Let's see how we close it out. 6 coming across. We can cover here, but it doesn't leave us much to do on the side of Chris.
Yeah, we're about to mill ourselves out, I think. Chris, down to tens of cards left in deck.
I think we might actually be less than that. I think he was on maybe 15 or so cards last turn, and this could basically push it over the edge. Dread Screamer gonna do the banish.
Dread
See if it
Screamer
hits.
with Go Again while there's a no block card in Chris's hand. This is looking dire, to say the least.
6, Go Again. Gonna be met for 3. Has to be met for 6. Otherwise, the game is over.
Yeah.
Sitting at 1 on hit, win the game is not what you want to be sitting at when your opponent's threatening it every time. And this is what a
And
way
the
to
Intimidate to take the last defending card.
what a way to style. Let's see which one it grabs. It
Oh,
immediately met by the
Defensive Art of
defensive art of war.
War.
Yeah, look at that.
Are we going to stay alive?
Does he even have 2 cards in deck to draw? I don't think he does. That's so good. He had the 1 card. He's going to be able to block from Arsenal for an unfortunate end to the game from Chris's side of things. But that was definitely a different pace than our first game, wasn't it, Rhea?
Very different. Interesting to see one player adopting the role of beatdown and one the role of the controller in that game, despite them both being aggressive decks. But regardless, very much faster paced compared to Dromai versus Teklevosen.
Definitely. And if you want to watch more games, don't go too far because we'll be right back with a couple of more. So we'll see you very shortly.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to week 7 of the ArcLight League. With me today is Wizard Grandmaster Peter Booth. Please help me pronounce your last name.
Budensick.
Budensick. Okay, there we go. Peter Budensick, Wizard Grandmaster. Today to help break down a Kasai versus Kano match between Rhea Adams and Easton Douglas. Peter, well, we pulled you in because we need the expertise. We need you to walk us through the lines and help us through everything. Tell us a little bit about what you think about the match between Kano and Kasai.
Yeah, the matchup between Kano and Kasai is, almost the reason to play Kano in this meta.
Mhm.
It's one of the natural predators of a warrior deck and like a guardian deck, for example, right?
Hmm.
The slow value attrition kind of game plan, Kano just goes way over the top of it, and that's the whole reason. You're not
Hmm.
getting pressured as much, so you can set up these really like cool, intricate things.
Mhm.
And as well as sometimes how much AB can they really pitch because of like mana costs and stuff like that. Usually
Hmm.
they're like a pitch kind of perfect kind of a deck,
Hmm.
using 2 to 3 resources every single turn. So you might need a little bit more as the
Hmm.
warrior side.
Hmm.
Um, Traditionally, a very good matchup,
Hmm.
unless your name is Majin Bey, who loses the finals to Kasai,
Yeah.
obviously. But
Get the
no,
jab
it
in
is
there.
little
Mhm.
jab, little
Yeah.
jabby. We have to let him know every day.
Yeah.
Got to keep
Yep.
him
Yep.
humble.
Yep.
So
Hmm. Okay, so I guess one of the more recent developments in the Kano, I'm sure you've like, oh,
mhm,
I've known this forever, but for people like me that are like kind of watching from the outside, there's been a increase in what we call pitch stack Kano, so using Sync Below's Fate for Scenes, going for a second cycle. So this is kind of like creates a weird sideboarding situation. Like if you know that, like if you go for that style, and then they present like AB1 Unga Bunga, is that like one of the situations that can get kind of hairy?
yeah, it is pretty interesting. There's a lot of people right now that have moved on to like a pitch stacking type of
Hmm.
deck, and they're still like the tempo truthers, like how
Hmm.
I like to say it. It is pretty interesting. That's like one of the heavy debates that a lot of us always have is if we're dedicating playing this pitch stack with all these defensive reactions, and your opponent sits down and just has AB1, you kind of lose a lot of equity because you still need to play the game very slowly and try to get to that second cycle. Sometimes you're able to like still combo them with all these defensive reaction in your deck, but the percentages of you missing is a lot harder.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
also something that I don't know if Easton is wants to pitch stack or doesn't want to pitch stack in
Hmm.
this matchup. It's really up to preference at this point
Hmm.
on which one Kanos usually do.
Okay.
It does take a significant amount of slots in your sideboard to have all these defensive reactions and Oasis and balance
Hmm.
adjustments for some of these matchups. So
Hmm.
I just want to see what type of Kano player Easton really is. If he wants to play a more tempo
Hmm.
style, the traditional
Hmm.
Kano, or wants to go into
Yeah.
that pitch style today.
Yeah. Easton is a very, very phenomenal player, one of the
Yeah.
highest ranked players in the US. But I mean, you can't just pick up and play Kano, pitch stack Kano, like without some
Hmm.
serious amount of dedication and practice. And there's also some odd situations that you can get into. So yeah, I'm excited to get into this match with you, Peter. Let's get into it. Week 7, match number 2 of the ArcLight League coming up right now. All right, getting into the match between Rhea Adams on Kasai and Easton Douglas on Kano. Peter, this I think this could be a pretty quick game, given the equipment loadout.
Yeah, we're looking looking at the equipment loadout real quick. You can already see Ray contemplating what she was, bringing AB1 in this matchup for. But yeah, only AB1 from the Kasai side, and you actually see something that's pretty interesting that you see Spellfire Cloak from the Kano side.
Mm.
Usually, a lot of the times you think this could go a little bit later into the game. You have a couple turns right from the Kano side into Kasai, and you
Mm.
bring that Tunic because sometimes you can get double. But he's saying we're blasting today. We got the Spellfire Cloak. And kind of like answers the question that I had at the beginning to see what type
Hmm.
of Kano player Easton really is. He's just going straight at it here, sending a blue Aether Spindle actually from that blue position, a blue Aether Spindle at Rhea 4-3. Obviously AB ones it gets to opt the first two and then Kano's and hits an
Ooh,
energy potion. An amazing start to this game
yeah.
from Easton, getting
Hmm.
to do 2 damage and getting that E-Pot, and he's arsenaling that Lesson of Lava in his arsenal.
Yeah, Lesson in Love, one of the cards that leans towards the Unga Bunga Kano style, right? This is because normally you don't want to shuffle your deck if you're playing the other
Yep.
style. Does the Ragamuffins hat kind of indicate that this is a more tempo, kill you first cycle Kano, or does that just not factor in much?
That one's a little bit more of a yeah, kind of a tech choice type of thing.
Mm.
With
Hmm.
Ragamuffins hat and you're going to pitch stack, you actually can have an imperfect pitch stack by a card,
Hmm.
either in the middle of it, before or like towards the end. you can always switch out a card to the bottom because you get to, if you have one card left, you
Hmm.
can put a card in your hand and you either put it back on top or the bottom, the secret
Mm.
bottoming of a card from Ragamuffin's Hat.
Hmm.
So it gets you a little bit more, but I would say most of the time, if they do present Ragamuffin's Hat, they are going to be more of a combo style than
Yep.
anything like that. As you can
Hmm.
see, Easton does not block the first Centauri Saber, taking that 2, and then just coming in for another 2 here as well. Just has 2 cards kind of just like stuck in her hand right now
Hmm.
from Rhea's side.
Yeah, it's going to be incredibly difficult to get gold activations. Blood on her hands is going to be very dependent on drawing a Spoils of War. So I think Rhea's going to Arsenal the Iron Song response. That combos pretty well with a lot of the other cards in the Kasai deck. And one of the reasons why Kasai's going to struggle to activate her hero ability is because Kano does not give you the opportunity to put cards in the graveyard very easily.
Yeah, no, not at all. Always just pitching it to go to the bottom of the deck on
Hmm.
there. Can't really activate the ability too much. But as we're looking into the next turn from Easton, we do know that he has that Lesson of Lava in his arsenal. We have
Hmm.
a yellow tome, and it looks like we have 3 other blues in our hand. What you can
Yeah.
do here, he's opting just to activate Kano here at the start. But what he could have done is go for a pretty big Lesson of Lava like line going through. You could play Lesson of Lava from Arsenal, get another
Hmm.
Lesson on top, do Lesson of Lava, end on a blazing, or grab a wildfire or another blazing to put in your arsenal as well.
Hmm.
But looks like he hit a red snapback from
Yeah,
the
that's.
top of his deck and coming in for 3. So Rhea's going to take 2 in AB1. We know there's going to be multiple spells coming through here. And
Hmm.
he's going to play a gaze from the ages from his hand, actually. You're going to opt to, and then that gaze is going to go back to his hand because a wizard non attack action has been played.
Hmm. Yeah, that looks like over on Rhea's side, she's gonna have to rely on this Blade Runner for go again. Which is gonna be, it's not ideal because that's not pushing a lot of damage and a ton of damage incoming. Another Aether Spindle banished. And I guess from the Kano's perspective, when you see AB1, the only thing you're really slightly concerned about is Oasis from the Kasai on your combo turn, right? It's pretty
Yeah,
much just blast and take damage down to like single digits and then go for the kill.
the Kasai matchup has become a
Hmm.
little bit like little interesting recently because of the increase of playing
Hmm.
I'm forgetting the cards in it, but it's like prevent 2 and then get an agility
Oh,
token.
take it on the chin. Yep.
Take it on the chin, yeah.
Hmm.
So with Kasai's and Dory's playing take it on the chin, it gets pretty interesting because even if they
Mm.
have
Hmm.
AB1, AB2, and they have the take it on the chin, they can prevent like upwards of like 3 to 4 on a wildfire, right?
Hmm.
So it hurts the math a lot because
Ah.
going through the
Hmm.
math of like wildfire hitting for 6, for 5, for 4, 3, 2, and 1, it actually changes the amounts of damage drastically because this is
Hmm.
an amplifical effect, right?
Yep.
So looks
Hmm.
here that he is just going to be blocking a little bit on these sabers here, but does get that Iron Song response here. But
Hmm.
Ray is doing a decent job trying to keep Easton, valuable to like blocking early and not being able to keep like every single card in his hand.
Hmm.
But he did pick up 2 copies of Blazing Aether and is actually
Oh, banish the
banishing
third copy.
the third copy.
Okay.
So we
Hmm.
we know that he's playing more of a tempo style here. Looks like he has another Aether Flare in his hand, which is going to be a blue one. Activate Crucible and then go with that Lesson Lava. What you can do what's really good here because you only have AB1 from the Kasai side is
Hmm.
that this Lesson Lava is going to be able to hit for at least 3. So
Hmm.
he can then put Wildfire on top of his library, play that Blazing from Banish that he can play in this turn for another 3 damage. Will be 2 after the AB1, putting the wildfire
Oh.
have the full combo already.
Hmm.
We have the blazing and the wildfire and any third spell, and we're golden here.
Mm. Okay, Blazing Aether goes into the arsenal. Wildfire, as you predicted, in the hand due to the lessons in lava. And assuming those two middle cards are blue, this looks like a pretty powerful hand, especially with the energy potion.
Yeah, pretty powerful hand here. So if we can't really see the top of the one for that Aether Flare, but there's the 2 blues in the hand, and then we have the yellow and less than lava, right? The, Basically, depending on what he hits on like off the top for that third spell is going to depend on how much damage he can do. He definitely can do upwards of the 29 to 36 damage on this
Mhm.
combo here, but he looks like he is kind of debating here. We did not see a prenup of go again here, so he doesn't know if the Centauri Saber is going to be able to get go again here.
This is where discipline really makes a big difference. If you pitch the well, there's no situation where you would pitch the Blade Flare to play Blade Runner because you don't have enough resources to attack with this entire saber. So never mind, that line doesn't make sense. But basically, holding back some information is useful. But I mean, even after taking 7, still plenty of health here. Now, do you grains? Is the question. If
Yeah,
you
the
grains, you
grains
give
one is pretty
full
interesting. Yeah.
information.
Yeah, giving full information there.
Yeah,
I know you want the token for the next turn with
yeah.
grains, but revealing that you have the blue in hand, and only
Oh,
having 2 resources left. Oh, so it looks like
going for it.
she is. So we have the 2
Mm,
resources left here as well. But he's just gonna be
yeah.
disciplined and just let her
Yep.
draw back up.
Mhm.
Is gonna just Kano on his turn, trying to get
Ooh,
her down a little bit further
mhm.
here.
Yeah. Is there a big difference between like high 20s and mid 20s, low 20s when it comes to uh going off with Kano?
Yeah, yeah. So there's actually the math is so much easier. Oh, okay. So it was a red ether flare in hand, so he couldn't have
Mm.
gone
Hmm.
for a full combo here just because
Hmm.
he doesn't have enough resources.
Yep.
But it does depend on how many resources you have and how much life total they are at,
Hmm.
because the 29 almost has to be specifically, you know, a wildfire hitting for 5 plus, and you happen to have a pretty good spell in the middle. But the
Hmm.
lower you get in the 20s, you can have a 0 for 1 to do the combo math.
Hmm.
You don't have to have a lesson of lava or sonic boom or a spindle to do that amplifier damage in the middle here. But
Mm.
does a couple damage going down to 25 here. Looks like he at least has 2 blues in his hand with that Voltic Bolt and the Eye of Ophidia in his hand.
Hmm.
Don't know about the other Aether Flare, but triple blue in hand with an Eye of Ophidia, that just
Or
makes me always want to go for it at this point. So
yep. Yeah, and we see it over on Rhea's side has plenty of resources, but the issue is that this doesn't have go again unless you play the glint. Now you're down a card, and you're gonna have to pitch the yellow to swing again, and that's gonna give Easton the green light to go for it. I think. Yep.
yeah, 100%. Pitches the yellow to come in with for the next one 4/5 here as well, and does have the into the swing. He's
And
in pretty
emptying the
much.
hand.
Ooh, oh, and entering the hand. Taking it, you have to do this against in this matchup
Hmm.
though. You have to put it on a relevant clock, because if you give Kano too much time, he's always going to have it.
Hmm.
But that Eye of Ophidia, super scary. Always gets a
Yeah.
Eye of Ophidia. The percentage of pitching Eye of Ophidia in a game in a relevant situation and not
Hmm.
is incredible. Eye of
Hmm.
Ophidia does so much for this deck. Basically, the
Hmm.
only brick that you can ever play.
Hmm.
Um, so gets to see what the top 2 cards are. You can always basically always put a blue with a Ragamuffins on top, or put any red spell or yellow spell on top, for you wanting to Kano for the combo as well. So it gets to see all 2 information on the top, which is key. If you hit red blue, you always get to do the math. Know all of it here. She only does have 1 resource floating,
Yep.
so you can do the math. If you're not going to die from this 8 coming in anyways from 11,
Hmm.
so if they do, randomly have Oasis or a Take It on the Chin, you can still play the game afterwards from that 3 position,
Yep.
but with only 3 life, and you
Hmm.
probably are getting them down a significant amount, probably like 10 plus, or just outright killing them in this situation. So let's see. You can see Easton, counting on his fingers here, trying to being like, all right, this is getting plus this if this happens. So
Yep.
counting up the numbers here from his
So
side. Let's see.
so from the Warriors perspective, I have played a lot of Dory versus Kano and Blitz, and this is where I just, take my hands off the keyboard. I'm like, you figure out if I'm dead or not.
Sometimes you just gotta pray. You gotta lean
Yep.
back. Oh, and
Yep.
we hit red Aether Spindle here.
Yeah, great hit.
He does only have a red Aether Flare, but I believe he top both of them, and
Hmm.
then he does Kano Ragamuffins hat, and then draws the additional blue and then banishes that wildfire. Because he has the blue and the Epot here, and he has the Spellfire Cloak, he has 6 resources here after
Mm-hmm.
the activation of Crucible, so you can use 2 for the Wildfire. We'll need to use 1 for the Storm Shatters, which is going to be 3, and then you have an additional 2 for the Spindle. So you can bump this by 1 with the Metacarpus node, so you can come in for 6 with Aether Wildfire here.
Yep. And Aether Wildfire going to be hitting for at least 5, and that's going to pump up the Spindle, pump up the Blazing. Oh boy.
Yep, gets to pump it
Yeah.
by 5, so we have that Spindle coming in for just a measly 9
Yeah,
coming
op
through
9,
here.
you
So
know.
just an op 9. You know, interesting. A lot
Mhm,
of the time, sometimes you can do this Spindle combo with like Wildfire, to where
mhm,
you Wildfire and Spindle and not and keep 1 Kano activation to see how much you opt with and hopefully find a Blazing.
mm,
But sometimes you can hit multiple red tomes or tomes and then do additional damage that way. But
mhm,
no need. We know that there's the Blazing in the arsenal here, but we do use it op 9 just in case, just in case coming through. But we know the Wildfire is coming in for 5, and
mhm,
then the Spindle comes in for 9 as well. So 14 points of damage have already been done. So 9 plus 5 plus the additional 5 from the Wildfire, amplifying the Blazing. So we're coming in for a measly 19 coming through, and Rhea's at 11. So that is going to be lethal here from Easton, being able to do just a casual
37.
33 damage turn, So
That's pretty
that's
good.
gonna be game for Easton. Yeah,
Yeah.
just like wanted to play the more of tempo style. Gets the payoff. Kasai only having AB1 coming through here doesn't need to spend 30 minutes pitch stacking a perfect combo. Can just kill,
Mhm.
just kind of do it the old fashioned way.
Yeah, that's really a good way to get it done. Just the old school, don't have to think too hard. Just your opponent opens up, they pitch a yellow to come in, and then you're just like, oh, okay, well you're yeah, you're dead. Okay.
Oh, what time is that? Oh, it's blasting time,
It's
and
blasted time.
it's blasting time, getting through. So
Yeah. All right, so Easton Douglas now I believe is 4-2. So he's, in the running for maybe making the top 4 of the league. So we'll see how he does. Rhea, unfortunately, better next better luck
we weren't
next
gonna
week,
talk
I
about. We were
guess.
gonna talk about it. We were
Yeah.
gonna talk about it.
Okay, anyways. So yeah, I think that was a pretty good example of a pretty standard Kasai versus Kano game. Kasai trying to put pressure on, but with AB1 and with limited amounts of blues, and you have to push. There actually there's a very, very interesting interaction between warriors and wizards, because we both kind of operate at instant speed. So sometimes you push the Dawn Blade forward and it's already lethal, and so the Kano has to act first. Sometimes you push the Dawn Blade forward and they're like, sure, I'll go to 1, and so you have to put the attack react on the stack.
Yeah,
And then they're like, okay, now I have information, now I can kill you. So there's a lot of beauty between the two classes, and how they interact, because it's one of the more unique interactions. So yeah,
yeah. It's always
it's, a-
fun playing.
it's very fun.
It's
Yep.
a little one sided currently, just
Mhm.
depending on how much ABB you have.
Yeah.
But no, it's always been a fun
Mhm.
interaction, especially back in the old Blitz days as
Yeah,
well with
those are
AB3 Dory.
those are the fun times. I used to love that so much. Okay. Well, anyways, enough reminiscing from us. We'll let you guys get on to match number 3. All right, so this has been Josh Lau and Peter Budensik with the ArcLight League. We'll see you guys later.
What's up, everyone? We are here with Week 7 of the ArcLight League. I am joined here by Taylor Crawford and our guest star, Alabama Crawford, as well. The Brothers United are here. So just get into it, Taylor. We don't get together too often for our two white guys in an Italian podcast. So now that we're all together, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. How about you, man?
I'm doing great. How are you, Nathan? I know we can't see your beautiful face right now, unfortunately. They don't make overlays for a head that big. So how are you?
All is well. All is well. This is technically the first ever episode of Toxic Tips.
Well,
That's true.
I didn't want to say the Beetlejuice, but somebody had to. But yeah, so Taylor Crawford, Lexi, extraordinaire if you don't know. Nathan Crawford, not really extraordinary at much. About as many nines as Miami strip club. But we're gonna get into the game here, and we got a good one this week. We got KO versus Viserai, so let's get right into it. So we got Lucas Oswald on KO versus Alexander Vore on Viserai. And we got the boring Scepter of Pain Viserai versus the super not boring KO. No sash on Lucas, as we see here. I think this game may have been recorded before we would actually, sash would be put into the game. So not going to see as many high-powered turns as we're used to probably in the last 2 weeks for anybody out there who's been playing. But a Viserai specialist here in Nathan Crawford. What are we seeing out of this loadout here?
So obviously, like you stated, we got the Scepter of Pain, which is indicating what the meta's kind of shifted into, like this turtley paraslogism with ArcLight Ascendancy to basically recreate the rune chance and then fire another one. So you're just looking for pumps associated with Ascendancy or even Ninth Blade in some cases, which brings an interesting point to the null rune, right? Losing that block value on that arm slot on KO's side is going to really change the math as far as specifically because of this type of Viserai where you're not necessarily looking to block the rune chance with no rune.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. And on the KO side, as you mentioned, we're going to have a normal setup here with the Tunic, as mentioned. No Apex Bonebreakers, so not going to be able to get as many mites, but are going to be able to AB. The problem is, if you are ABing a lot against Viserai, you're probably going to be losing a lot of tempo. But this Viserai build, probably going to see a big buildup of rune chance. So when you're playing what is essentially a fatigue-style deck, maybe not as many D-reacts as something like a Guardian, Taylor, famous aggro player here, how do we go about sequencing these turns as we're actually going to see a Wild Ride discarding a Tear limb from limb, not what Lucas wants?
Well, that's not exactly the best start. But so going into the aggro games like this, KO tends to want to actually block with cards from hand, while Viserai makes sure that he cannot. So we'll actually probably see Scabs roll more than once or twice in this game, depending on the 5-card hands that's drawn without Wild Rides or Go Again sources like E-Strike.
Yeah, that is the one awkward part about KO. A lot of people don't realize KO is not actually too great at playing 4 or 5 card hands. He is definitely able to play those 4 or 5 card hands, usually with, off the back of an agility token or something to that effect. But off a general 4 or 5 card hand with the Viserai not really doing much from turn to turn, probably going to be pretty hard to get all those cards out of the hand. Not going to be able to make use of things like Clash of Agility, which makes sense why you'd maybe take out the Apex Bonebreaker in this matchup as well. So, as Taylor mentioned, definitely going to be relying on Scabs quite a bit, as we see a few auras getting built out here from the Viserai, Blessings of Occult, Rune Chance building up, and the Ninth Blade in the hand right now. So, Nathan, kind of go over some of the play patterns you'll be looking, because with this Turtle Burst style of Viserai, you don't necessarily just go for 52 Rune Chance and kill him, correct?
That is correct. You're basically just trying to get to like the magical 6 or 5, whichever is the cost of ArcLight Ascendancy, just to make it a free card. And then you're trying to just wait for a hand. Like basically the hand that he had last time was perfect, right? You had the blue to pay for the Slogism, and then you had the Ascendancy. The problem was he did not have quite enough rune chance on this turn to actually throw the hand, or we would have seen a more tempo-oriented play than just acquiring more rune chance. So yeah, we're not building to 30, 40 rune chance and killing them in one turn. We're trying to build to anywhere between 6 to 10, throw it with a pump, let the on hit regenerate the rune chance to then be ready for when we see the next one. And we also have the ability to reach into that graveyard with cards like Rattlebones and stuff like that. So when you block with the ArcLight Ascendancy, it's not the biggest deal in the world. And then we also have Ninth Blade as a backup.
Right, so essentially two main game plans, the ArcLight Ascendancy obviously being very good because it refreshes a bunch of your rune chance. the ninth blade just being a very big attack. As mentioned before by Taylor, kind of hard to use out your whole hand, so going to be using scabs. But on this turn, we're going to see Lucas IP1'd himself last turn, playing out the Assault and Battery, getting the Agility token, but we're going to see a big Blood Rush Bellow here into a Bare Fangs Go Again, and most likely Claw into a big attack. So these are the kind of turns that KO need to try to rip through the armor and the defensive strategy of Viserai.
Yeah, so looking at his current hand configuration, it looks like it's going to be a Claw followed by Swing Big with an Arsenal. Intimidate trigger on a later turn, but it is a blue, so low damage. So he's probably going to want to try to figure out how to generate agility tokens throughout his next 2 or 3 turns. It looks like Vor is insulated here with a D-React from Arsenal and a D-React from hand, also generating another Rune Chant. So he's probably looking to actually Arsenal the Mordred Tide and play out the Blessing since he got rid of his Tunic counter, so it's going to depend on what this balance draws here at the end of the chain.
Right, and as you mentioned, Blue Arsenal probably not going to be the best, but speaking of Arsenal targets, what are some of the more important Arsenals that KO would want in this matchup? Because Rune Chants are very uninteractable as far as like from a hate perspective. There's not many sideboard cards you can bring in, and KO is not really known necessarily to have much disruption. But the best or biggest disruption that KO could have is things like Arsenal disruption with both CNC off of a Cast Bones, or maybe a Send Packing off of Cast Bones, or a Blood Rush himself. So what are some of the big targets in the arsenal for Viserai that he's going to look to park there, Nathan? And for Taylor, what are some of the better hits here that KO has for disruption?
So basically for Viserai, you just want to arsenal either a way to acquire Ascendancy or a pump, unless you get a little bit of breathing room to, take this turn as an example, right? You have the opportunity to either arsenal a Mordred Tide or a Blessing. However, it could pose a problem later in the game if he draws a hand where he gets one of the pieces and he can force himself into playing the Blessing when he might not want to, because he clearly has plenty of Rune Chants to execute what he's trying to do. So really just leaving that arsenal free for, like, in this situation right here where you have the Ascendancy, but you don't have that very pivotal pump, right? So now you're forcing yourself to play that Blessing and get that Ascendancy into the graveyard, or Become is also a way to acquire some of those missing pieces.
Yeah, and as Taylor, as I was sorry to interrupt there, but we just see another kind of not great Blood Rush Bellow here from Lucas. And I was going to ask you, Taylor, normally when we're going into a fatigue matchup like this, you don't necessarily want to chain your Blood Rushes back to back, but you are kind of on a clock with Viserai, as we do see a big hit on the wild right here, a Beast Within. So Lucas actually might be able to make a very good play of maybe 5 Go Again into Cast Bones. But how are the sequencing of a KO deck like this different than, say, going up against a Guardian who's on a bunch of D-Reacts? You kind of want to have an on-turn, off-turn, things like that. But with this matchup, how does that work when you're kind of on a clock?
Well, because you're on a clock, you actually want to chain the Go Again attacks such as Wild Ride, E-Strikes. You'll also want to be pitching your Agile windups as quickly as possible. Of course, you want your Blood Rush Bells, as we've seen, 2 in a row. Usually, you don't actually want those back-to-back into the more control-style decks, but Viserai is a little bit different since he does actually have agency to kill you randomly on like turn 5 or 6, depending on hand texture. Another big issue is cards like Clash of Agility, which are probably in his deck as a yellow and red, or maybe just red. He can't block with those in this matchup, only on his big 9th Blade or Ascendancy turn, so that those cards are pretty much turned off. And then you want to look at cards like Pulping, which are very scary cards to play into a deck that you've already seen Hold the Line and Sink Below into. I believe that we did see a yellow Wild Ride on turn 0, so we are aware that is in his deck. As we can look here, we see just the basic suite of KO cards be revealed to these Cast Bones, but because he already had a Might from earlier in the turn, he does get the agility.
Yep, so, kind of just going on turn here for the KO is Lucas, because he really has no options, as you just saw there, though. Still not the greatest turn. Blood Rush Bell discarding, a card, getting the Wild Ride for what I think was a 9 because of the Might, and then just having to pitch 2 reds for a Claw for 5 in the Cast Bones. So no huge turn, but a bunch of consistent medium turns, as we're going to see that disruption that was mentioned before with the CNC agility with 6 Might. So coming in here for 12. But Alexander is on 19, does have a bit of armor left, but as mentioned before, not going to have, a one-shot game plan. Kind of needs 2 or 3 turns of aggression, and how is he going to pull that out from here, Nathan, as he's facing down 12?
It's actually a very interesting spot. There is a pretty easy out if that tunic counter is on 3. You would have the option to block with that blue Spellblade Assault and then pitch your D react to play the Rune Blood Barrier by flashing it in with Creepers to effectively block with all the cards. You are going to lose some Rune Chance, but you're going to protect that high priority arsenal. But the hand is a little weird given this scenario, but very heads up play from Lucas by utilizing that text on CNC and knowing a deck that's kind of turtley is going to lean on D-Reacts a lot, and this is very disruptive.
Yeah, hold the line in hand here. So really only going to block 2. Normally could block 5 if drawn twice, but this is just the first attack of the turn, so no Wild Ride triggers or anything like that. And as you mentioned, we're going to see a full block for 12, giving up all the armor, the tunic, the creepers, everything, making use of that fabled legendary Bloodied Oval as we see here. Very expensive card. Taylor, I think, has a few gold foils of those. Finally getting this awful Smash Instinct out of Arsenal, and as Taylor mentioned, getting the agility turn. Is he going to be able to finish the game on this next turn as we see the agility token, 38 to 14, and a double Cast Bones hand?
Wow, those cast bones are really clumping up in Lucas's hands, or just drawing them at the wrong times. The good thing is about the Intimidate is that he probably did not want to actually play Hold the Line there, and since he does have the ArcLight in his arsenal, he decides to actually pitch it and not play out the Dominate. Interesting.
Yep, just a Scepter of Pain, as we're going to see a Send Packing for 7. And the good news that Alexander doesn't know, but I'm sure Alex is looking at, it seems like this is a very scary go again. We're probably just going to see 3 cards laid out in front, ArcLight put into the arsenal, some Rune Chance made or some pings happening, and then, Lucas is just going to have to cast the Cast Bones, which, while scary, is no more threat on this turn. But Alexander going down to 14, most likely going to block this one out, but how many more turns can he live and how much more does he need? Because he, as Nathan mentioned before, we need that one big turn followed by a secondary turn, and the closer we get to being dead with now no armor left on our side, how much air can we breathe and keep ourselves alive here? We're grasping here. What's going on, Nathan?
So he once again he drew the perfect hand. He had the blues ready to ready to pay for Slogism. Okay. I mean, we might be able to. Okay. So, well, this was fun.
As we see everybody's favorite Scab Skins roll for 4. Double Cast Bone turn. Just playing a few 0 for 6s, 0 for 12s, however you want to recognize them and prescribe agility token value to. I don't know what Alexander's thinking here. He's going for a play with Sonata Galaxia, a new card from what I think was Bright Lights or Heavy Hitters. Heavy Hitters, if I'm not mistaken. Expansion slot card. So going out there, getting a bunch more Rune Chance, and just firing off this ArcLight Ascendancy, because he is facing down roughly 28 damage next turn. Oh my god.
Yeah, Boar's probably thinking about what he's having for dinner.
Yeah, I mean, we got about the perfect hand you could think of. 2 agility tokens, so this E-Strike is going to be very fast, very quick, and on top of that, very powerful. And it's also going to draw us a card. I'm assuming this turn is going to be E-Strike, draw a card for, 17, and then possibly a Bear Fangs or a Swing Big. So it's not looking too great for Lucas here, but he is going to go down to about 7 or 8 by the time this turn's over.
Yeah. Really good thing is with the Rune Blood Barrier out, if this does hit and generates the Rune Chance, those are actually going to be almost a Ward-esque ability. But none of them hit, so we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, as Nathan mentioned, you generally want the Slogism and other cards like that to buff that attack. Just a measly 5 Dominate, not really too sexy, as everybody's favorite E-Strike for 17 draw card came out here. And Lucas did almost brick here. Fortunately, is going to have the tunic counter to follow this up with another 8.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of those turns.
A turn of all time, as they say.
Yeah, and people are out here playing Victor.
Couldn't be me. I only lost so much elo. I don't know about Nathan there. I think he played Dory. It's fine though.
Oh man.
That's
Never
your-
again. Never again. Never.
Fool me once, shame on you. As we're gonna see a follow up of 10 here, or 8, excuse me, making the mic.
You were
token.
close.
You know, we can't all be as smart as you. As we're gonna see ourselves go down to 1, gonna pick up a turn here, make a few rune chants, sigh probably, pass our turn, and just know we are dead to about 16 different spells all at once. As Reckless Swing is online, Pulping is online. As we're gonna see the Claw for 4. A nice reduce to Rune Chant going to be followed up by a pitch of the Agile Windup, and then most likely 6 Dominate is coming through. But I will leave everybody, in suspense to see what actually happens here. We could go Runner, but that would be pretty dumb, as we're going to see 5 Dominate come through. We can block for 4, but we are just going to be 1 short here, as I do not think there is a D-React in our arsenal.
Well, he almost got there.
He did have a 14.38 average value, which means the deck is playable.
I think
at your
so,
local
actually.
armory.
Yep. 80%
Yeah, I mean-
of that value was generated from Hold the Line.
Yeah, plenty of value generate. I think Lucas probably had about 32 different 25 plus damage turns there. So for those of you looking for a new deck, as the Armory deck is, I think, in an LL next week, Viserai might be it. But, until KO goes away, we might have to put that on the back burner. But maybe it is the Enigma counter. We will see, as we have the world's premiere of Part the Misspell going on right now as we speak, because we are in the past and the future all at once. But I'm going to kick it over to Taylor and Nathan to say anything they might want, either about this game, life in general, how excited they are for Part the Misfail and our future tournaments coming up. We got Nat season next month, followed by the Pro Tour. A lot of exciting times for sure.
Yeah. Flesh and Blood looks good going forward. How about you, Nathan?
Yeah, I'm so excited to go to Minneapolis.
Are you?
Really?
No, I'm not.
That's where you met your first wife, right?
No, I've
Right,
one wife
'cause-
and that's it. One's more than
Oh, I
enough.
thought when you lived in Minneapolis with your family, like your sister. Never mind. It's wrong person from Alabama. So that was week 7 of the ArcLight League. Phenomenal game there. Lucas is at 4-2, so maybe he's live for these imaginary playoffs. I hear they're giving like jet ski rides to the next celebrational if you make top 8. So we'll see there. But thanks everybody for tuning in. Nathan's never seen the water or a jet ski for that matter, because all they got is slime infested shores down in Alabama. I've seen it before. But thanks for tuning in, guys. This was Toxic Tips / 2 White Guys in an Italian / ArcLight League Week 7. We hope to see you next time.
Pierogies out.